Oh my God, I need to count down. Oh, 20, 19, 18, 17. Hold on. A little bit of a premature beginning. Welcome to After Nebrasketball. It's time to talk Nebraska basketball. A win today at Pinnacle Bank Arena, 103-72. Nebraska takes down North Florida after an offensive explosion. 11 threes, 45% from three, 58% field goals. Connor Essegian goes 6 of 8 from three-point range, ends with 22 points to lead the scorers, and North Florida puts up 43 threes, makes 14 of them. This North Florida Osprey team, a team that had already picked up wins against South Carolina and Georgia Tech, and had a loss to Georgia that was a little tighter than the one today. And welcome in. I'm Jack Mitchell, by the way, from the I-80 Club. Kaleb Henry next to me, and Kaleb. Wow, burning down the nets today at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Wow.
I know a couple of weeks ago we had looked at this game and said that's one to circle. It's right before you get into conference play. You're in a holiday weekend. It can be dangerous. And then Nebraska went on an 18-1 run early, and that was kind of it. It never got to single digits after that run again. And Connor Essegian continues to shoot extremely hot, back-to-back games, getting 6 threes. You have no Berke Buchtengel tonight, but Braxton Mia, 1 rebound shy of a double-double. He put in some good minutes. The first three-pointer of the game that Nebraska missed, they still got 3 points on the possession because Andrew Morgan grabbed the rebound and ended up with a 3-point play. You kind of got all of these little contributions. Obviously, you saw what Connor Essegian did. You see what Bryce Williams and Jawan Gary do. But even when you got late into the game and you still have all of the Sam Hoiberg and Cale Jacobson and Jeffrey Grace scored, like all of those things add up. Really wanted Henry Burt to get that bucket to go in because this is one of those games that you're 7 games in, but you feel really good right now about getting that many guys on the floor, them playing really well, and that going into the start of Big Ten play, although it's not the end of the non-conference yet because of the 2 December games.
Yeah, I assume this is probably in the non-conference portion of the schedule, Kaleb, the best team, I would say, that Nebraska plays at home. Obviously, Creighton and St. Mary's.
Yes.
At a different level. And some of those teams maybe that they'll see in Hawaii are going to be better than North Florida. We'll see. But this is the best team that they're going to see at home in one of these bye games. And Kaleb was probably the best that they've looked in any of these games so far, I think, tonight.
Well, yeah, because they hit it right from the get-go, and it wasn't just one of these kind of like incremental things. They obviously you saw North Florida get their bucket first from actually a guy from Nebraska. So you were either from Nebraska or for Nebraska, and you were shooting lights out tonight. That's kind of the only way that this worked. But they took off right away. And then I think one of the things when you looked at this team, and even with like South Dakota, they kind of kept themselves in it a little bit. Yeah. And Nebraska shot really well. Connor Essegian shot really well. But it wasn't like it was analytically over, like final, where you're just like, oh, no, as long as just neither team collapses, this is going to stay about where it is, about 20 points, and it ends up being a 31-point difference. It was over 5 minutes into the game. That's not the way this team has played. Like even when they've gotten 20-point wins, it's been kind of close, or all of a sudden it's like, well, they cut it to 12 late. This never happened. Nebraska got up and then just stayed up and was able to rotate a bunch of guys in, and you were never in doubt. Like, because normally with these non-conference games and this being kind of like no brands on the other bench, the under 4 timeout is still usually where you start to get that beat traffic alert. Under 8 hit, and people are like, you know what? This one's not even going to be close. Let's see if we can get home a little bit. We'll get in time for the 5 o'clock news. Maybe we can hit a little bit of some later in the afternoon. What other action's on? Who's on today? Who's playing? Who's on for the NFL?
Like, I don't think he's putting Decision back in. If he's not putting Decision back in, we got to get home. We got to get home.
Decision's not going for the 3-point record. He's out. Let's go home.
Is this okay? I don't want to overreact to 2 straight, near 100-point games. But like, have we finally hit what we expected the Fred Hoiberg offensive experience would be like? Here, I know he's kind of shifted styles based on what the roster is. Is it too early to say, or is it accurate to say based on just a couple of games that this is so far this year looks most like the Fred Hoiberg we kind of imagined from Iowa State in that style?
Yeah, and there's got to be some middle ground, because think about it, Nebraska's either shot like 35% or tonight 58%.
That's true.
Like there's got to be some middle ground, but within that middle ground,
you're right. They don't have the shooters to do this regularly.
But within that middle ground, take tonight for instance, there's 31 points of difference to find that middle ground. So what is it? Still a 20-point difference? Because defensively, you still held North Florida under 40% shooting. So I think the identity that Fred Hoiberg has shifted to is still there. But what's happened over the last couple of games is the offense has helped you progress to the mean, because they were shooting so poorly over the first 5 games, and the last 2 games shoot so well. It's like, well, yeah, that average makes more sense now where things are because of this shooting. But this tells you if you can get hot, and Connor Esigian is the one that I think we all tabbed as he's got to be the one to get hot, because he's that 3-point guy. He's bigger than Casey. He plays better defense than Casey, and that's going to be the comparison all year. What is your replacement for Casey? And if it does come down to one person, what does Connor Esigian do? I know we wanted to replicate him, recreate him in the aggregate, but what Connor Esigian is doing right now is surpassing what Casey brought in terms of total production last year. Now, here on the other side of the ball, though, Jack, 43 attempted threes for North Florida. We saw 41 in the opener. We saw, 42 or 43 from Creighton. Nebraska is doing a good job of plugging up the middle and making it so that you have to shoot threes, and someone is going to have to go ballistic from deep to really play with this team, especially if Nebraska hits like they were hitting tonight on offense.
Well, and North Florida was cold at the beginning, and I thought the perimeter defense was pretty good in the first half. They definitely, it felt like they went blow for blow with Nebraska at the beginning of the second half for a while. Just in terms of
it was back
every time, and they were getting some open shots as well. But yeah, I like the most encouraging thing to me was on the offensive, not necessarily the hot 3-point shooting, which was obviously nice, and Esigian is the confidence in Esigian is definitely going up. What was most exciting to me, I think, though, was just the ease that Bryce, especially Bryce, but Juwan Gary had scoring. Going in, get the ball in their hands. Man, they looked like they felt like they could get pretty much anything they wanted, and they usually did. Like they were really efficient in terms of this. I'm going to go back and look at Bryce's numbers for the night. He especially was that way. Let's see. He was 6 for 11 on field goals, 2 for 5 from threes, ended up with 17 points. Juwan Gary was 7 for 12 field goals. He did take 4 threes, 1 for 4 3-pointers. So he only missed 3 2-pointers, and he had 18. I thought you could just sort of feel the veteran calm presence from those guys in this game offensively during this.
Yeah. And even when you look at the 4 threes that Gary took, I wouldn't really qualify any of those as bad shots, because one in particular I know that he missed. I said it to myself at the time, that's a shot that both teams want to be taken, because North Florida had gone to the 1-3-1. And anytime a team goes to the zone, what do? You got to shoot them out of the zone so they go back to man-to-man.
Yeah.
And if you're in that 1-3-1, what are you saying? We want to make sure you're shooting something from the outside. And so Juwan Gary takes a wide open corner three. It rims out. But I was like, that's exactly what you want out of this offense. You spread them around. You got a wide open three-pointer for Juwan Gary. I don't even care who it is in the corner. Braxton Mia could have the ball. And if he's that wide open in the corner for a three, Josiah Alec last year, I don't care. I don't care. If you're in that situation, I don't care who it is in the corner. Let them shoot the ball. Yeah. No. I'm going to let them shoot the ball.
We have one exception. Just the one. The one that you mentioned. Yeah, Braxton.
No.
Okay. A couple of comments on the zone from our Discord. By the way, we take live comments during After Nebrasketball from our Discord I-80 Club members. And if you ever want to do that, be a part of that. It's a great community. And you get immediate access to all the I-80 Club shows. Just go to patreon.com/I-80 Club. DW has some good comments in here. He said Bryce and Connor combined for 39 on 21 shots. That'll do in terms of efficiency. Mm-hmm. That gets to what I was saying before. That's kind of what I was trying to get to there. Then he said Raleigh carved up the zone when they tried to go to it. You mentioned that too, yep. Caleb. You know what was interesting to me? And they missed. Morgan missed a couple of shots when they went to zone. Essegian had that one turnover when they went to zone. That said, I thought it was – I've seen a lot of this team, when teams will go to that zone at the end of a half or something like that, just feel like they don't know how to attack it. They don't know. And today I did not feel that at all. It felt like they and I think Nick even said this during the broadcast, is that they spent a ton of time working on zone in practice. They expected to see it. Like, they looked ready for it in a way. I don't know that I've seen them under Hoiberg so far.
Yeah, North Florida's 1-3-1 has been pretty good. They went 2-3 for a while. And literally the first possession that they went 2-3, it was matched up really well that it could have been confused for man. And if you're confused deep enough into the shot clock, that can create some issues on getting a good shot that possession. But they called it out right away. Yelled it out that they were in zone and went and got a good shot. That 1-3-1, as soon as they got to it, Raleigh does a good job of managing it. They got everyone kind of into the positions. There was one possession where Fred did have to walk up the sideline and tell Gavin Griffiths to come out a little bit because he was just straight up on the wing. And in a 1-3-1, you're not making anyone move if you're straight up on the wing. Like, they're going to guard you very easily. So he got him to come out a little bit. And that's actually the one that I think Juwan got the wide open three in the corner for. So this team did a good job when the adjustment went to zone because they were dominating the man-to-man. Like, North Florida had to go to a zone to try to get something out of it.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Bryce, I mean, when they tried, they couldn't they didn't have anybody on that team who could guard Bryce, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Anyway,
that's
Bigelow.
There's my rousing introduction.
I was going to say, I actually asked PBA once Bigelow goes live on After Nebrasketball if you guys could just sound the horn so our listeners know now's the time to start listening. We would appreciate that as Jacob Bigelow joins us. Bigelow, welcome. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, fellas. It's the same culprit that was making noise on the court after the last time we were doing this. It's the same guy. I wanted to get the shots up, but that's still a rousing intro. And 103 points. I was doing a deep dive after the game, trying to find the last time they scored 100 in regulation, because people immediately went to that 4 OT Big Ten ACC NC State disaster. But I just remember Trey McGowan's angrily scootering down to the end of the floor
that's
during. That's what I remember most about that game, was the little in a weekend full of scuffles. I remember that scuffle and Trey McGowan's angrily riding his scooter down the other end of the court.
Nobody was complaining about sportsmanship then, were they?
No, never.
Weird.
And then I was reminded that in the 2020-21 season, they scored 100 points in regulation twice in a season where they won 9 games. Two of those 9 wins were they scored 100 points in regulation. Once against McNeese in the opener, and the other against Doane, not in an exhibition game, but in a regular season game.
Wait, they played Doane in a regular season game?
Yes, they did. The COVID year was weird, Jack. The COVID year was weird.
Okay. Weird. By the way, I have an echo from one of you. I don't know where that's coming from exactly, but I'm hearing that. Well, I found one in 2018. I actually found one in 2018. I thought was the most recent one, but apparently I'm wrong on that. That was against Mississippi Valley State. You might remember that one, Bigelow. 106-37. First regular season game of the year in 2018, 2019. You remember that one?
I remember that one pretty vividly. I was about 100 yards that way filming that game as a student manager. So I remember that game pretty vividly. The season opener from what wound up being Coach Miles' last year. But yeah, that was what I thought too. But then I looked back through some of the box scores, and I'm like, oh, they did this twice in the weirdo COVID year.
Yeah. Bigelow, we were just talking about not only the success, the success shooting obviously from three is going to stick out, Connor Sejan's performance, but we also were kind of just talking about the efficiency and Nebraska's ability to score at will with Bryce and Juwan in particular. But what was the biggest positive to you offensively that you saw from Nebraska in this game?
That there was not a stretch of the game where it looked like they didn't know how to play with each other. There wasn't really even in that South Dakota game, there was a stretch where things kind of looked like they were stuck in the mud for a little bit. And I think this was the first of these bye games where there wasn't like a doldrum or a drought or like a who the hell should we draw something up for moment. It was smooth, it was efficient for the most part. I mean, the assist to turnover ratio is incredible. The amount of assists on made shots, I think they had 20 assists or something like that. I've got the book right here. They had 22 assists on 40 made shots. I mean, that's pretty good.
And that's what they're doing against South Dakota too.
Yeah, doesn't matter who that's against. That's a pretty impressive ratio, and I that was kind of the thing that stuck out to me. There was not like a 3-4 minute drought, or what did they look like? They were still getting used to playing with each other. It looked like they knew who to go to, who was on, who had the hot hand, and it looked pretty smooth throughout.
And then, just in terms of the defensive performance, what did you think of that, Jacob? Because, North Florida started out cold, but there was a lot of contested shots from outside that they were taking. They seemed to kind of go blow for blow for a while in the second half against Nebraska. What did you think about the defensive performance against a team who was really going to lean on the three and then occasionally going to kind of take it in and try and punish Nebraska for being too far outside and dish it off? What did you think about that?
Yeah, Fred Hoiberg compared it to playing Creighton, because if you gotta lock down the paint, and if they want to take threes, they can take them if they're not falling, but you can't let them have both. You can't let them have the paint and the good shots from three. They end up taking 65 shot attempts. 43 of the 65 were threes. That's it's similar to Creighton in terms of numbers, I guess, but North Florida finishes with 22 paint points, and compared to Nebraska's 58. I mean, they did not really. I mean, they didn't completely shut the water off from inside the paint. I mean, 22 of their 72 points were paint points, but I thought I was still pretty impressed with their ability to. I thought their closeouts were better tonight than they were against South Dakota. I thought they had more of an edge, on the defensive end. They were, it was kind of all business on both ends, obviously, as evidenced by a 31-point win. But I mean, North Florida gets they open the game with a three from Nate Litteris, and then Nebraska immediately went on an 18-1 run, and they never looked back. They made a couple pushes, but the result was never really in doubt.
Yeah, I think it was a lot like playing Creighton, but way harder. Anyway, other comments on the
well, here you go. Since you brought since you brought up Creighton, if you look at North Florida, they had two different players that also only took one shot in the game. Nestor Diachok, he played 4 total minutes, went 0 for 1 from the field, did his best Kalkbrenner impression. And then Mason Lee had 3 points. He made his only shot for the game. He played 16 minutes. Everyone else found a way to get up more than one shot in the game.
Thank you. Are we going to get that update for every game
You're
this
welcome.
year? Like, who's that team's Kalkbrenner?
We
Is
should.
that kind of- every game.
Who's
the entire
that?
year.
Kalkbrenner.
Kalkbrenner.
Da, 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 da.
Okay. By the way, I'm watching the volleyball selection show. Texas is in the Penn State region, so Texas not coming to Lincoln. We're
Right.
still waiting for Nebraska, and Kaleb might have to jump off once he finds out where Nebraska is going. I want both of you to answer this. Kaleb, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Bigelow. So what is it? 6 games into the year, whatever it is, 7 games into the year. Just what is the biggest thing that you've learned about this team? How is it squared with your expectations, Kaleb, so far, in terms of now that you've got a fairly decent sample to work with on what this team is?
I think it's pretty in line with what my expectations were. We knew it was
You're positive,
the team that on paper was going to be better defensively. They were going to be bigger overall. So you were hoping that was definitely going to be better defensively, better rebounding. And then you still had shooters. You had all of the aggregate that you wanted to replace Casey and Rink. And you saw over the last 2 games, that's definitely there. Like I said, they've progressed back to the mean after the cold shooting for the first 5. So this is everything right in line with where I thought they'd be. And you got through St. Mary's and Creighton and you split those, and 6-1 is about where that's where I would have thought this team was going into the first 2 Big Ten games.
Bigelow, how about you?
I'm kind of with Kaleb. These 2 Big Ten games are always so odd and weird, especially when they're spread out.
Yeah.
Like Nebraska doesn't play. I mean, they don't play again for 6 days, and then they go another 6 before they play again. It's it's the end of the semester and finals and all that. I don't miss this time of the year when I was a basketball student manager, let alone a player. But these games are so weird. I mean, they're both huge games, man. They're both huge. Like on the road at East Lansing, Fred Hoiberg mentioned after the game, he's like, that's a building I've spent plenty of time in. My son played there. I've been to plenty of games at the Breslin Center. I know what it's like when it can, be rocking. And then, Indiana here, I don't think enough people like Indiana here on a Friday night on Big Fox.
Let's go.
I mean, that's a massive game. And, Indiana, I hope they're not still ranked after the performance they put on in Atlantis this past week. But, I mean, those games are huge. But you asked a question about Nebraska. I mean, they're on par with where I thought they'd be. They're still, I think, working toward their final form because it's still December after all. But, I mean, all the guys, everybody is, looked the part to the extent that I thought they would. There have been, multiple games with 4 or 5 guys in double figures, it feels like, and they're a really balanced group. And so far, I mean, one non-con loss at this point was kind of where I thought they'd be too. So it's kind of on par.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of excitement building for that Michigan State game, and we are going to do our after Nebrasketball show for the Michigan State game. We didn't have that on the original schedule because it was a TBA time for a while. It also is obviously the same day as conference championships, but football season's kind of over now in a lot of our minds for the time being. So we will do that. That's an 11 a.m. game. It's an 11 a.m. game. So we'll go on about 1:30-ish on Saturday, and we're all going to be at our homes. Nobody at PBA, so better internet, better everything there when we do that. That'll be a whole lot of fun. Yeah, it was funny, Bigelow. Fred was talking. So it's interesting. You always hear Fred, obviously, actually talking in the post game press conference. I heard him on the radio. And he was like, yeah, my son played there when he was talking about Michigan State. He almost said, like, people forget my son played there when he was talking about Michigan State. But Kaleb and I will break down that matchup, Jacob. But I know you've probably been watching Michigan State so far this year and got Frankie Fiedler there, obviously. What do you think that matchup's going to be like for Nebraska?
They're tough to peg, man. They have, Michigan State's been in a weird spot these last couple of years. I've watched them a couple times, and they're kind of incredibly frustrating to watch, to be quite honest. They've got some pieces that I like in guys like Jaden Akins, Jeremy Fears, and then obviously the local interest with Fiedler. Their front court leaves a lot to be desired. I think if Berke is back healthy, that could be an area where Nebraska, takes advantage. They have a transfer big man who transferred in from Longwood, Simon Zapala, but he also started his college career at Utah. He started his college career at Utah State with Raleigh Worcester. They were freshmen together. It'll be the second game this year where Raleigh will go up against a former teammate. But then they also have a former 5-star recruit in Xavier Booker, who is, I don't understand how Izzo is using him. It's very confusing. They're in a really weird spot, and it'll be, I'm interested to see the matchup, for Nebraska. I think I like it for Nebraska, aside from, being on the road at the Breslin Center. But, I think, at first glance, I like the matchup for Nebraska just in terms of how, frustrating and hot and cold Michigan State's been to watch so far this year.
Do you think Izzo will wear a Christmas sweater, like a reindeer Christmas sweater or an elf Christmas sweater, and get teed up in it? Because I missed that live last year. I really want to be a part of it this year somehow.
Yeah, I don't know what their schedule looks like if they have a home game closer to Christmas. But I mean, I think if Tom Izzo wants to give the people what they want, he'd bring the elf sweater back. If he wants to give the people what they want,
I want an elf sweater and I want a technical in it. There's two things I want, to be honest. Right? I want the elf sweater alone isn't enough. It's getting teed in it, screaming at the officials. That's definitely what I want. By the way, Nebraska volleyball will take on Florida.
Oh, he's an angry elf. He must be a South Pole elf.
Nebraska volleyball will take on Florida A&M and the winner of South Dakota State and Miami in the first and second round. We'll see if we find out anything more about that. Well, guys, man, it's just it's Kaleb. There's enough here to your points, both of your points about how the season's gone so far. Obviously, the win against Creighton motivates a ton of this, but I think today does a lot too. It's going to be once they get back, and Jacob makes a great point about that Indiana game. I think it's going to get pretty revved up at PBA once these games and once the conference season goes. I think there's a lot of excitement about this team because of what's happened in these last 2 weeks for Nebraska. Kaleb, what are your thoughts before we let you go here, seeing right volleyball stories?
Yeah. Well, if you think about just kind of the way this arena gets full, even when the team's not that successful, you go win on Saturday and then you come back here on a Friday, this place will be nuts. Because you're not worried about, at that point, not worried about what is Nebraska football doing on the weekend, because we're just waiting for the bowl game in late December. So you don't even, you're not curious about that at all. Volleyball is going to be at home, and they're going to roll someone, and they're going to get out of their region. You're not really worried about that. You're going to have a lot of stuff set up getting back here for Nebraska men's basketball, and if you can come out of these two conference games undefeated, you go 2-0 on those, and then you get into the rest of the non-con, you're set up really, really well going forward, especially for fans to show up who haven't been treated to an exceptionally great non-con slate in terms of what they have to watch at home. They're going to get into the Big Ten with Nebrasketball and having a good record and having some good brands coming here for them to watch and get loud for.
Yep. By the way, a couple of comments on the Discord, and I heard Fred or Kent say this on the post-game show, but they said no students. Does Michigan State get an entire week off for Thanksgiving, or what's the deal with that? No students at the Breslin Center on Saturday, or not in regular session. I don't know what that is. Do you guys have any idea what that is or not?
I don't know for sure. I do know they have one game a year where they have alumni day, and their student section is full of a bunch of alums and grads. I know
Let's go.
The olds. If I named it, I'd call it Izzone Olds Day, because that's what it appears that maybe getting some olds in the Izzone. I know they do that once a year. I'm looking at their schedule right now.
I'm looking at the academic schedule for Michigan State, which I've normally memorized at the beginning of every academic year, but classes end for fall semester on December 8th. Oh,
Yeah. So
they're done.
Yeah. So they're done. So
final exams are happening. Final exams start December 9th. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. That's weird.
Is that right? Is that truly right?
Here's another example of like schedules being weird this time of year. I mentioned Nebraska, having the 2 games 6 days apart.
Yeah.
Michigan State goes to Minneapolis on Wednesday night, and then they come home to play Nebraska. Indiana, on the other hand, has 3 more basketball games before they come to Lincoln.
Really?
They have 3 more games. They play 2 at home against Sam Houston and Miami, Ohio, and then they play Minnesota as well before they play Nebraska.
Yeah.
But schedules are weird this time of year, man.
There are a bunch of Big Ten games already in the middle of this week, which I didn't even realize until during this game they put the schedule up for them. And you're right, Michigan State going to Minnesota, which is a game I assume they'll win there. But I just want to go through here the other ones that are coming up here during the beginning of the week. Like Tuesday, you've already got a conference slate on Tuesday, guys. You got Northwestern at Iowa. You got Michigan at Wisconsin. That'll be a good game. That's 8 o'clock on Peacock, which I canceled, and Washington at UCLA. So I'm going to Bigelow's house to watch that one. So there you go. Kaleb just dropped out. And he didn't tell us, but he's dropping.
It's volleyball time.
So
It's volleyball time. Chat. It's volleyball.
It's volleyball time. So we're still waiting to see who the other top ranked team is. Real quick.
Wave.
But okay, thank you, Kaleb. I appreciate it. Sorry I didn't go to you. I was too interested in Bigelow. Bigelow, give me your initial quick thoughts here on the Big Ten with what you've seen so far. Is it still kind of the way that we thought it was in terms of this huge jumble in the middle of the conference, or is the early season results kind of cleared that up for you a little bit?
I think the whole thing could be a huge jumble. I think the whole damn thing could be a jumble, just based on what I've seen. I mean, it's completely different because I don't think there's a dominant team. Like there isn't a 7'4" Death Star in West Lafayette that everyone's going to be looking up at this year. And Purdue is still really good, and Nebraska has to play there, and that's the one arena in the league Nebraska has not won in. That's the one left. The one arena they've not won in is Mackey. But the top of the league, Purdue's looked okay. I don't think they've looked great by any means. Illinois, I think, is better than I thought they would be. The surprise team is obviously Wisconsin. They've overachieved and then some, in my opinion. They're definitely, Dennis Green, the opposite of the Dennis Green. They are who we thought they were. They are not who I thought they were, and that is in part, due to what they've gotten from Omaha Central. John Tanjay.
Is that the big reason? I haven't seen him yet this year.
I mean, he's been on a heater, man. He's had multiple 25+ point games. He was national. I think he was the national player of the week, the Big Ten player of the week. I mean, he has been on a different level, and it's been really impressive. Considering he was initially committed to New Mexico, and Wisconsin kind of swooped in at the 11th hour and got him to flip his commitment. And he's been one of the best, not just portal guys in the country. He's been one of the best, scorers in the country by far so far this season. And then I think last night, watching Oregon beat Alabama. I think Oregon. I think Oregon's pretty good. Dana Altman's got himself a team, and I think there's you can split the West Coast editions into groups of 2. The 2 that I think will be near the top, Oregon and UCLA, and then USC and Washington kind of. I think we'll be on the struggle bus a little bit, along with Minnesota toward the bottom of the conference. But there's still quite the jumbled up mess, I think, from top to, probably the bottom 3 or 4 that, won't be in the conference tournament in Indianapolis. I think everything between, everything above those guys is quite the jumbled up mess.
Tuesday, Northwestern at Iowa, Michigan at Wisconsin, Washington at UCLA. Wednesday, Ohio State at Maryland, Michigan State at Minnesota, Oregon at USC. Thursday, Purdue at Penn State. That might be interesting. Friday, Illinois at Northwestern. I'm just doing conference games. And then Saturday, you've got not only Nebraska, Michigan State, also Rutgers at Ohio State, Iowa at Michigan, USC at Washington. So that's your early Big Ten schedule. We got a lot of those games to come. Let's see here. Jordan on the Discord is saying, I've rarely seen Jack without a hat. Did he get a haircut? I didn't, but just did it nice for you, Jordan. You like it? I went to church today, so that's the one place I don't usually wear a hat. Mav Scribator's telling me about the Peacock deal going on right now. That's That's nice. Good. Very good. And there are people who are saying if we do the Caleb's gone, but if we do the Kalkbrenner of the Game Award, they're asking us to call it Who's the Kalk? We'll see. We're workshopping with this so far.
Yeah, that'd be similar to like, in the late aughts when, Mark Titus had his Club Trillion thing because he'd play 1 minute and then it would just be all zeros. Like it'd be like Club Kalkbrenner, like who had only had one shot attempts. Like it'd be in the similar vein to Club Trillion. Shout out to one-time guest on my podcast, Mark.
Nice. One last question for you. Has Creighton did Creighton's performance in Las Vegas devalue the win Nebraska had against them at all for you?
No, not really. Volleyball news: Wisconsin is the 2 seed in Nebraska's regional. By the way,
baby. Not what we wanted.
Yes, the other quad is includes Wisconsin, Colorado State, Texas A&M, Arizona State, Georgia Tech, and Tennessee. So that is the volleyball news.
Thank you.
But no, not really. I wasn't. I thought that those games are going to be tough for them regardless. They play the one without Ashworth, and then they play without Kalkbrenner too, and they beat Notre Dame. I mean, they're in a weird. I mean, that's still going to be a pretty good win at the end of the year, I think. I don't know if it's going to, I don't think it's going to, fall to quad 2 or anything like that. I think that'll still be a quad 1 win at the end of the year.
On the road, you have a lot of leeway for that.
You do. Yeah. I think it's top 75 on the road to be a quad 1.
Creighton's obviously struggling, but I don't know, getting out of the top 75. Either way, that's fun,
And I feel like this has been a thing with Creighton like these last couple of years. They've started slow and then they round into form and they figure.
Of course, same thing 2 years ago after Nebraska beats them, right? They had a rough stretch and it was the mono and I saw Kalkbrenner was out against Notre Dame at the end too. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Nebraska probably needs them. And St. Mary's got like a really impressive win. They blew out USC and then they lost. And Jacob, now I'm forgetting who they lost to.
They lost to Arizona State in the final of a weirdo
did that surprise
in Palm Springs. A little. That USC result probably meant more about USC in my book. I don't think they made a 3 in that game. I think they went over from beyond the arc. USC is a weird group because I like Musselman, but he kind of played a game of how many 6'6" guys can I put on one roster in the portal, throwing that team together. I'm serious. If you look up their roster, like all of them are 6'6", or at least listed at 6'6". But I mean, St. Mary's, I think that'll be. I don't think that's going to be like this dark cloud hanging over Nebraska. It's going to be like you wanted that one, obviously, really badly, but you made up for it 5 days later, with the win in Omaha. And I think St. Mary's is going to be still a really well thought of team, when it's all said and done. But yeah, they had quite the back-to-back with those 2 results.
Bigelow, the thing with St. Mary's is once you get to January, it's just really the Gonzaga games for St. Mary's, right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, there's some other solid, programs in that league that are, that have been okay these last couple of years, like, but those 2 Gonzaga games are definitely the main events on their schedule once you get into league play.
Sure. Yep, for sure. All right, great stuff, Jacob. Thank you, everyone, for watching tonight. Couple things I want to mention again. We are going to do a post game for the Michigan State and after Nebraska ball for the Michigan State game. We were kind of a TBD on that, but we decided to go forward with it. So we will do that. That'll be next Saturday when they play. That's Nebraska's next game, as Bigelow was talking about. They got quite a bit of time off here. That's an 11 a.m. tip Central in the Breslin Center at Michigan State. So that'll be about a 1:15, 1:30 start from us afterwards. So hang on. The way to know when we start is we wait for the radio broadcast to finish everything they're doing here. My employer, KLIN, so we do that. And then we get on after that. The other thing to mention, too, is if Caleb's not here to show his nice shirt, but we got a bunch of the merch here with Brasketball. I know Jacob was impressing with it at Friendsgiving
absolutely
a week ago. We are still have our merch store, and you can see the link to it here right on the YouTube page if you're watching there. We've got great deals on that right now, 25% off and free shipping. If you want your own Brasketball gear, which is the hottest gear right now in the region, jump on there because now that goes throughout the rest of the day today, and I think it goes into tomorrow too. But You might want to check on that for sure. So if you want to get in on the Nebraska or the basketball gear, go for it. All right, that's it. Bigelow, thanks for your time. I'll let you go and get busy on everything else you need to do. Anything else you want to mention about what you got going on here this week or this season?
Yeah, just stay tuned to the Stretch Big Pod. It's been a little while since I've put one out, but I'll have a recap of the games this week up on the feed. I'm trying to effort a Michigan State guest to preview the Spartans before the end of the week. We'll have that out, and then more to come. From me on Huskers Illustrated as well, HuskersIllustrated.com. And appreciate the time like always, Jack. Love hopping on with you all to talk a little shop. This was a good time like always.
Yep, always appreciate your expertise and appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you here on Saturday. All right, thank you, everybody else, for joining us. We're going to sign off now, but please go ahead and check out the I-80 Club, the rest of our YouTube videos. Josh and I have a reaction to the Iowa game if you want to watch that. I was very disappointed about that, and we will have our live members-only show coming up Wednesday, talking about the football game mainly. So if you want to check that out, become a patron, patreon.com/I80 Club. With that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on After Nebrasketball.